It was recently the 15th reunion of One Direction, and along with the fact that I cried, it also brought back a lot of feelings I haven't felt in a really long time. Not only do I love their music, but listening to it as a 24-year-old really brings back a lot of feelings of nostalgia and grief about when I was a teenage girl. It also makes me feel like, and I'm not trying to be dramatic here, but that I will never love anything as much as I loved One Direction. Because when you're 13, everything is the most important thing in the world to you, or it's the worst thing that's ever happened to you. And listening to their music reverts me back to my 13-year-old state of mind. And thinking about One Direction made me think about how when I was in middle school, my middle school homeroom teacher was obsessed with the Beatles. She talked about them all the time. And I remember when she would talk about them, I would think, so it never really leaves you, which now I can attest to the fact that it doesn't. So in honor of One Direction, my middle school homeroom teacher, and the fact that I've been thinking about it a lot, I wanted to not only go down my own memory lane, but take a deep dive into the history of the fangirl and talk about the complex relationships that fans and artists have with each other and just the art that's created in general. I know most people like myself have this idea in mind that people that were alive before the 1900s were no-nonsense prudes that had no fun and never got down. But something I find quite beautiful is that in every generation of every era, there were always fangirls losing their shit over musicians. And from my research, the idea of the fangirl started here, with Franz Liszt. And I'll be honest, I kind of get it. If I was alive in the 1800s, like, he's better looking than most of the people that I've seen that were alive at that time. I know I'm talking about the 1800s right now and it's like, oh my god, who the fuck cares? But I promise it gets a little bit more interesting. There's a reason I put him up on the wall. A critic of music at the time stated that his audiences were anything but formal. They stood on their seats, they cried, they swooned, they lost their minds over Franz Liszt. The way that Franz made his audience feel created his own unique term, Lisztomania. We are all now familiar with terms like this, like Bieber fever, One Direction, Fanfiction, Bobby Soxers, which is Frank Sinatra's fan group, and then King's Angels, which is Elvis Presley's. And the list goes on, but this all started here with Franz. In our minds, we think of him probably as some boring ass composer. He actually was a heartthrob of the time. People really enjoyed his music and they also really enjoyed looking at him. And what does an attractive musician like to do from time to time? Be a player. And Franz was a damn player. So let's go through some of his relationships and you'll see why I think that these relationships are very reminiscent of what we see now when it comes to like really popular heartthrobs in the modern era. Also, I went to the library to print these pictures out and I couldn't figure out how to put more money on my library card to print more pictures. Because I was gonna print a bunch of pictures of the women that he was into, but I couldn't. And I didn't feel like asking. So instead I decided to draw the women that he was with. And I think that they turned out pretty true to life, if I say so myself. So first we have Caroline de Saint-Cricq. Probably gonna butcher all these names. I can't be bothered to look all of them up, there's so many of them. They met when he was young and coming up into the music world. They were young lovers in their teens. He taught her piano and she taught him literature. Just love all around until Caroline's father decided that she needed to get married to someone from a better family, so they were separated, could never get married, could never fall in love. He was heartbroken. Sucks for him, great for music. Next we have Adele de Lamprunrede. This picture low-key the best one. I was kind of proud of this. So Franz met her when he was 19 and she was 34. I'm pretty sure for even at the time that was weird, but cannot confirm or deny entirely. So they started flirting and whatever, and eventually she convinced her husband to let Franz live with them for a few weeks. It ended after a few weeks as well. Her husband wasn't as keen with having him there as she was, understandably. Next on the list is Marie de Agut. Marie was married before she met Franz, and later we found out through her writings that the previous marriage was a bit of a disaster. Regardless, she had 2 previous children before she met Franz. Eventually, she met him in Paris, and they became platonic friends for a really long time until her kid died, and then they started to, hook up, I guess you could say. As things happened, she got pregnant with Franz's first child, and she eventually left her husband for Franz, which was a huge scandal in the France world at the time. I don't know exactly what her relevance was. I think she was just really rich, but it was tabloids. They were together for a few years and they split up for a few years. They were off and on until they eventually split. Next was Marie Payel. Marie was also a celebrated musician. In particular, she played piano. Before she met Franz, however, she had her own drama leading up to them meeting. Her previous fiance tried to murder-suicide her and her mom and himself, I'm assuming. He decided luckily to not follow through with that. The reason he wanted to murder-suicide her though was because she was getting married to someone else, so I don't even really know if he was technically her fiance then or if it was like a previous fiance. After that relationship ended, she still continued to live her flirty life. I wouldn't say she was like too much on the town, but she got around a little bit. And it's speculated that she had a relationship with Chopin, and one time when Chopin was gone, he came back and realized that Franz and her were hooking up while he was gone, and he obviously did not like that. I think that ended their relationship as well. But Franz and Marie never officially got together. Okay, there's a few people in between this next person because there's just a lot of them and they were kind of boring, so I just decided to skip them. Next is Caroline Sayen Wittenstein. She was married to a royal when she met Franz, and let me read you off his name because it is extremely long and I will not be able to say it without reading it. She was married to Prince Nicholas von Sayen Wittenstein Berleburg Ludwigsburg. So, whoever that is. She eventually left her husband for Franz, but was never able to completely divorce him because he was a royal. So her and Franz, over time, because they couldn't get married, they kind of just decided to be platonic friends, which is kind of a weird thing to go with, like just stay together but don't be married. But you know, it was the 1800s, so that was more important. Next is Agnes Klindworth. I'm telling you, this man got a lot of girls. So Franz met her when she was 28 and he was 42. Controversial age gap, but we already saw that he had one with this lady where she was 32 and he was 19. So I guess it's just kind of like the karmic cycle. This relationship, to me, it seemed with my research, seemed like the first one where it's kind of reverse, where he really liked her and she liked him, but not enough to want to like date him officially. They were never officially together, but they were hookup buddies for a really long time. And the reason I mention her is because they stayed good friends basically until he died. Now, the last person on this list was a little bit off the rails. Her name was Olga Zelensky. And girl, she had some things going on. She studied under Franz and was a student of his. It is said that she was a little bit quirky. She had short hair. She dressed very masculine, which was not common for the time. Apparently she bit her fingernails so much that they bled all over the piano when she was playing. She's also a drug addict and was suicidal. People aren't sure if they ever officially slept together, but they were really, really close regardless. One summer, she decided to send him a cable, which is essentially a telegraph, telling him that she was going to show up at his house and try to kill him, which she did follow through with when she showed up at his house with a revolver, which then he was like, girl, what the fuck, I'm calling the police. So she decided to not go through with killing him with the revolver. Instead, she decided to write multiple books that were steamy but slightly slanderous about him, and they were basically like revenge fan fiction. Speaking of fan fiction, let's talk about that before we go deeper into the history of the fangirl. Fan fiction, in my opinion, is one of the most interesting things that has come from fangirl culture. Not only is it extremely creative, but it's much more intertwined with media and culture than you'd even think. For example, the 9/11 to 50 Shades of Grey pipeline. This is common knowledge, or maybe common internet knowledge, but the reason the book and then the movie 50 Shades of Grey was written was because it was self-insert Twilight fanfiction that the author wrote and was eventually published, after removing the Twilight parts, obviously. And it's sort of confirmed, but not really, that Twilight was inspired by Stephenie Meyer's love for Gerard Way and My Chemical Romance. Twilight itself wasn't a fanfiction, but many people think because of her love for the band and spending a lot of time listening to the band while writing Twilight, that there was influence from My Chemical Romance and Gerard Way within the book. She said in interviews that My Chemical Romance was on her like writing while listening to music playlist sort of thing, like where she gained a little bit of mental inspiration. So I don't know exactly how strong this connection is, but it is a fun one. And the reason that Gerard Way started My Chemical Romance in writing music was to deal with his PTSD from 9/11. Obviously, this idea relies on the butterfly effect being true, and also that Stephenie Meyers never explicitly confirmed that My Chemical Romance was involved in writing Twilight, but I don't think it's totally out of left field to think that because she was listening to their music when writing the book, that the music would have influence on her writing. I know it's just silly internet lore, but I always think of it whenever I think of fan fiction. The type of fan fiction that I think is most most interesting though, like 50 Shades of Grey, is the self-insert YN fanfiction. YN means your name. Don't get me wrong, I've dabbled in reading this, but this self-insert fanfiction and any fanfiction in general is such an integral part of fan culture and also how fan culture became what it is. While fanfiction has been around for a long time, a lot of people believe that what we know as fanfiction now spurred from a fanzine called Spocknalia. Spocknalia was created in 1967 and it centered around the show Star Trek. It was a printed magazine that featured different poems, stories, commentary on what people thought about the show. Within this magazine was where many people speculate the first popular slash fiction originated and was recognized as like good. Slash fiction is taking two heterosexual characters and basically giving them gay undertones and creating a new story. There was a story called The Ring of Saturn, written by Jennifer Guttridge and Spocknalia, that took the two characters, Captain Kirk and Spock, and basically made them gay for each other. I didn't read it, but I am interested to. Aside from the popularity of this fanfiction itself, the magazine as a whole gained respect from many people, including the creators of the show, which was good because instead of leaning away from the idea of people creating their own stories from their work of art, they actually leaned into the idea, and some of the creators or people that worked on the show submitted their own perspectives and lore about the characters that they worked on. The popularity and acceptance of this piece of work kind of gave fangirls the green light to do whatever they want. It eventually led to websites like AO3 and Wattpad, which were platforms where people were able to write their own pieces of work and publish them. The popularization of these websites definitely contributed to what we know as the modern fangirl today. By modern, I mean like 2000s and onward. I don't want to say pipeline, but sort of a pipeline, because when you start to read fan fiction about things you like, you're kind of getting deeper and deeper into it. It takes you from being a casual enjoyer to being someone who identifies as having One Direction infection. Fan fiction and art like it allows the consumer to add their own personalization or twist to either the celebrity, art, TV show, movie that they enjoy, which then makes them more personally attached to it. Let's use One Direction for example, because the reason I'm making this video is because I was thinking about One Direction. When One Direction was formed and their management decided where they wanted to go with the band, they decided to give each individual member their own personality that people could attach to. Harry being the lover boy womanizer, Niall the cutesy innocent one, Liam was the dad of the group, Zayn was the bad boy, which is honestly kind of a little bit racist now that I think about it, and Louis was the troublemaker. With them all having their own distinct personality, fans could pick a boy that they identified with and attach to them. Maybe not even necessarily identifying with that personality trait themselves, but what they'd want their boyfriend or love interest to be like. Definitely a form of projection, but 13-year-old girls, including myself, ate it up. These personalities being assigned also made it easier to write fanfiction and self-insert type of work, because the consumer or fan had this preconceived idea of what they were like, so they were able to spin it in their own perfect way. Obviously, I cannot even imagine how much this fucked them up internally. I cannot imagine someone projecting like an idea of like what my personality should be like on me, and I just have to go with it because I want to keep my brand up. But it did work when cultivating a strong fan base. Back to fan fiction though, I clearly loved One Direction. But you know what made me feel personally attached to One Direction? Thinking about the impossible scenario that maybe one day Harry Styles would be my boyfriend. And you know what delusion made that possible? Reading fan fiction. It fed directly into my 13-year-old hormones and I didn't even really realize it. Also, I mentioned something called slash fiction earlier, which when it comes to real life people, it's definitely toxic and fetishy when it comes to gay couples. And it's also been a very large part of fandom over the years. We saw it with Beatlemania, which I'll get into in a little bit, where people would ship John Lennon and Paul McCartney McLennan. It's prevalent in many TV shows like Sherlock Holmes, where we have John Locke, which is, honestly, I don't really know what his name, but Sherlock Holmes and John. And in One Direction, quite literally every single one of them were shipped with each other. The most popular one being Larry Stylinson, which I'm a grown woman now, so it's disrespectful to speculate on people's relationships and sexuality. So I'm not gonna say anything about that except for Freddie is my queen. Sorry I'm making a niche reference there, but if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. Overall, while fanfiction can be extremely toxic and sometimes problematic, it does help grow fan bases. Not only does it allow the fan to feel more personally connected to the artist or art, but it gives the fan base so much more content to consume, perpetuating their fascination and obsession with something that they're interested in. Alright, let's get back to the fangirl timeline. Sorry, I kind of derailed a little bit there. I was just fascinated. So I'm going to jump forward in time and get to some heartthrobs that we actually know of, because going through like from his time to this next person would take far too long. And this heartthrob that we are all familiar with is Elvis Presley. So why did I choose Elvis as the next person? Well, Elvis I feel like is someone who we know our like older generations have talked about and we're obsessed with. They all have a story about what they think about Elvis. Elvis came from very humble beginnings. He got discovered at 19 years old by Sam Phillips of Sun Records, and it kind of just spiraled from there. Obviously, his music was extremely influential. His sound was very unique, and so was his voice. I think the combination of rock and roll and blues was just exactly what was needed for that time frame, and he eventually became coined as the king of rock and roll. And while he is remembered for his amazing music, he's also remembered for his charismatic personality and just the attitude about him. And this attractive personality helped cultivate a legion of fangirls. And because he had such a strong and committed fan base, he was able to get away with some things that maybe other people wouldn't be able to get away with. You know, like meeting Priscilla when she was 14 and he was 24. Then he eventually had Priscilla come live with him when she was 17, like she was literally still in high school. And then it's also speculated that the whole time that she lived with him, he was just constantly cheating on her. I feel like it's barely even speculation at this point, like he definitely was just constantly cheating on her. And also, some people believe that he didn't even want to get married to her when they got married, but he had to do it because her father threatened that he would expose that Elvis met her when she was 14 and that would ruin his reputation. Obviously, people still thought it was wrong that he was 24, she was 14, but I think people were able to turn the blind eye easier. It's all very messy and it's all very speculative. The reason I point out this relationship and what surrounded it is because people are often inclined to think the best of the celebrity or the person that they're supporting because they think that they know them and they don't want to tarnish the idea of them that they have in their head. There's many accounts of people talking about Elvis like they personally, intimately knew him and they absolutely love him, not wanting to talk about any of the bad things that Elvis had done in his life. This isn't just exclusive to Elvis, however, but happens with almost every celebrity. This perpetuates the relationship that many fangirls have with their favorite celebrity or work of art. Something that I think is unique in recent years compared to past parasocial relationships, though, is how much further they're taken more often. Like, yes, there were people writing letters to the president begging him not to shave Elvis's head when he got drafted, but that was more of a small, loyal group. I would guess that Elvis probably had weirder parasocial relationships in real life that maybe weren't accounted or I just don't know about. But when I was doing research, someone used people writing the president as an example of the crazed fans of Elvis as compared to something worse, so maybe there's not. And I feel like writing a letter to the president asking him not to shave your fave's head isn't that crazy. Anyways, when the internet came around, this gave fans more opportunity to try to contact or find their favorite, whether that be sending them messages online, having way easier access finding where they live or where they go. People even posting real-time updates on where a celebrity is so other people can go track them down. And in general, inserting themselves into the celebrity's life. I just feel like in the past, if a fan knew this much about their favorite celebrity, they were probably like an actual stalker as compared to just someone who's a fan online. I feel like it's normal today to see someone post a picture of a celebrity being like, Harry Styles is on a corner in New York, go find him, and then a million people rush to that location. Now on the other side of this coin, a lot of artists, mostly bands or solo singers, sort of rely on this fan obsession and parasocial relationship to shoot them into like mega fame, which is something that some celebrities and artists can only dream to be. This fame and legion of supporters allows artists to get their work out there better. Since this is pretty much impossible without someone having a lot of fans, which are usually a lot of them are parasocial fans. And with these fans essentially creating a person's career, the artists sometimes do feel like they have to cater to their audience, sort of giving the people what they want, which isn't always a good thing. I feel like a well-known example of this is when it comes to boy bands and how management advises them to not like get into public relationships because they want to keep their fans' delusion or hope alive that one day they will end up with said band member or artist, which is completely unrealistic, but it does incentivize people to be hardcore supporters. Another example of this when it comes to TV shows and movies, which happens less often but still does happen, is when showrunners, creators, or writers, or whoever is really in charge of like the plot of the story, will sometimes alter the original storyline to cater into what the fans want. I'm stealing a Mike's Mike fact here for a second. Sorry, thank you Mike's Mike, I love you. But in Pretty Little Liars, the writers decided to change the storyline to maintain their ships' relationships to appease the viewers and keep them watching, which is very interesting to me. I don't necessarily know if that's a parasocial relationship in a sense, but I think it does tap into like fan artist relationship. I think when it comes to parasocial relationships, artists know that you have to walk a fine line between giving people what they want and protecting yourself. Because we've seen instances where people take it too far, sometimes ending in death, and that's clearly not something anyone wants to happen. When I was looking up stuff for this video, I came across a video of fans waiting outside Justin Bieber's home. When I initially clicked on the link, I thought it would be from like 2014, 2015 when he was really at his peak, but no. This was like a few months ago. People just lingering outside asking him for a hug.
Hi, Justin. Can I get a mask? No. I haven't been out in years. I haven't been out for
I hear you. 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 This is my home. You know what I mean? This is where I live, and I don't appreciate you guys being here.
Which would have been crazy in 2012, but 2025? Like, leave that man alone. Because somewhere along the line, these girls were led to believe that they had some sort of relationship with Justin when they really don't. I'm not saying Justin Bieber caused people to stand outside his home and feel okay with asking him for a hug, but that the decisions made for him when he was a teen that incentivized girls to believe that they actually knew him, wanted to be his girlfriend, and felt like in general that they knew him and deserved to meet him. This marketing of people thinking they knew him worked when he was on tour, where you literally had to pay thousands of dollars to meet him. But now it's 10 years later and there's still grown women standing outside of his house when that shouldn't happen. This parasocial relationship, in my opinion, is why a lot of people get burnt out by fame, even though many people argue that it's just a part of the job, which I don't know. Obviously, it's extremely toxic and harmful to the actual celebrity that's having to endure this parasocial relationship, but it is a game of give and take, because with marketing, you're trying to keep the fans engaged as much as possible, while also hoping that hopefully it doesn't go too far. Derailing slightly here, but where I find these parasocial relationships most concerning is when it comes to online celebrities, or like influencers, I guess you could say. Because of how this toxic fan culture has been normalized in society as a whole, people take that mindset and apply it to their favorite online creators, which it should not be the same thing. It's still horrible when it happens to major celebrities, but when it's just a normal person who has a large following being like legitimately stalked and tracked down, that's way more dangerous for that individual person rather than the major celebrity. Usually these major celebrities have management and security that can help keep them safe, but random internet celebrities don't have all of that. Luckily, in some ways, that internet famous people have smaller audiences in general, so there's less of a chance of someone a little bit off the rails finding them and stalking them, essentially, but you never know. With online celebrities and influencer culture becoming more prevalent in society today, I wouldn't be surprised if soon we see more creators come out and talk about these experiences that they're having with their fans that are just completely not okay. Now, next in our timeline, we hit the Beatles. The Beatles were really everything I've already discussed when it comes to fangirls, but heightened by like 10 times, and they just exploded into this crazy worldwide phenomenon. The Beatles formed their band in the 1960s in Liverpool. Fun fact that most people already know was that there was another drummer before Ringo. His name was Paul Best. Oh, let me tell you, if he would have stayed in the band, he would have been the heartthrob of eternity. Like, the rest of them are attractive individuals. They pale in comparison to this man, Paul Best. Either way, Ringo Starr replaced him, but that was probably for the best. After he was replaced, they were quick to become one of the most influential bands of all time. They rose to fame fairly quickly when they began to take off in the UK in 1963, but then exploded in popularity in 1964 when they took off in the United States. When I was doing research of the Beatles, I never really comprehended that they were only making music, like recording records, for about 7 years, which I feel like is not very long for like kind of the impact they had on culture as a whole. Like, obviously they were longer for together than that and they made individual music, but I was just surprised by that. Anyways, when the Beatles began to rise to such high levels of fame, there became a new term called Beatlemania. Basically, Beatlemania means that their fans were like screaming, crying, throwing up as soon as they saw them. I think an iconic and also somewhat recognizable day of Beatlemania was when the Beatles came to the US for the first time, and there was thousands of people at the airport waiting to see just like a glimpse of them. And the pictures themselves are pretty iconic because I see pictures of that happening and I'm like, yeah, I understand what Beatlemania is. Like, just by looking like that, Yes, I know exactly what that is referring to. With this extreme popularity, the Beatles began to tour their music and were the first band to do stadium tours in a way that we know them today. These massive tours were also where we first began to see the emergence of band merch, which is a staple of basically every musical celebrity now. Before the Beatles, artists would have merchandise, but typically was homemade by the fans. However, with the Beatles, that's where they began to produce and sell their own t-shirts at their shows. This was a fun way for fans to feel united and have a great memento to take home from the concert. However, I fear we have strayed away from just buying a simple band tee into a whole nother world of consumerism. And it's not even just with fan-specific merch now, like it spreads way beyond that. It's being made for pretty much anyone or anything that gains a little bit of popularity that people think that they can capitalize on. Because they know that people want to be included in these fan bases, so they'll buy pretty much anything that is associated with the thing that they like. I understand wanting a t-shirt from your favorite artist or wanting to buy a small trinket from your favorite online creator. But now people make it their life's mission to have complete sets of merchandise that someone puts out, which I'm not saying is a new thing. People have always had crazy collections, but usually they were just an outlier when it came to a fan base instead of everyone involved. Again, nothing really wrong with that in particular. Where I find more issue with it is artists knowing this and pricing their goods as high as possible because they know people will still buy them. They know fans will buy these products because it gives them a false sense of connection. And so to take advantage of someone who's already paying thousands of dollars in like an artist sense to go see you just feels a little bit wrong. I feel like this is especially egregious when it comes to merch, but it's not like really merch. It's more of like associated, celebrity endorsed. Like, why the hell did the Harry Styles brand just come out with a toy? Not the toy that you're thinking of, a sexy toy. Completely unnecessary. We also see this with celebrity makeup brands, which I've talked about in a different video, so you can go watch that if you want. I'll put it right here real quick. But this merchandise has just become such an important part of fan culture, and people can get carried away with it under the guise of supporting their favorite artist or creator. It's not just band merch that's getting out of hand, but basically within every fandom of every type of art. I saw a video of Comic-Con the other day, and it just kind of looked like a big-ass shopping center. I know when it comes to Comic-Con, that's kind of like what it is because there's not a lot of places for people to buy this merchandise in their typical day-to-day life aside from the internet. But I think it's just another indicator of how we're seeing overconsumption take over people's lives. There's nothing wrong with wanting a collection, but buying something with someone's face on it or a piece of art on it doesn't make you more or less of a fan than someone who does or doesn't have that stuff. This culture has also now bled into internet culture where basically if someone hits 50K, they're putting their name on a shirt. All of this to say basically that I blame the Beatles for the fact that there's a 9-year-old boy named the Rizzler who sells a tank top with a Zin can on it. And I had to look at it. Also, this was my reaction to finding out that the Rizzler was 9 years old. Oh my god, I feel so bad for that boy. Alright, so next on the timeline, and sorry if I'm skipping a ton of people, but this video is already going to be long as hell, so we're jumping forward a little bit. So now it's about 1970, and Michael Jackson begins to release his own solo music, even though he was still a part of the Jackson 5 at this time. But really, this was when he became Michael Jackson as we know him. I feel like everyone knows this, but in case you don't, Michael Jackson started his career in a family band called the Jackson 5, where he was the standout and lead vocalist at 6 years old. The band itself was extremely successful, which led to him turning solo when he was just 13 years old. This man was booked and busy before he was even a teenager. Anyways, where he went superstar platinum was with his release of Billie Jean, and then also the Thriller music video, very, very important. He released this video in 1963 when he was just 25 years old. They said, "Take 5, Michael." He heard "Change lives, Michael." It wasn't just the song that changed everything, but the music video that accompanied it. People often point to Thriller as to what revolutionized music videos. It was a combination of a short film with like a whole plot arc with a music video, which was like dancing and singing, obviously. In the case of Michael Jackson's Thriller, it has an iconic dance number and the song is also amazing. But I think where fans really enjoyed it was the fact that they got to see Michael like smiling, talking, acting, and feeling more natural. And they could watch this all on their TV at home, which made them fall in love with him even more. I feel like this helped foster a deeper connection between him and his audience, as usually with music videos in the past, it was just the artist performing on a stage or like a regular song like concert scenario. So to see him in a different scenario sparked a new type of love. This video also opened doors for artists in the future to use music videos as a way to connect with their audience on a deeper level. I feel like everyone who likes music videos can name a few off the top of their head where it's like that's how they really fell in love with the artist that they were watching. And for good reason, they're so fun. In the modern day now, we can watch these videos over and over again, beginning to decipher or analyze what the message of the story really is. Maybe even better than just listening to the song in itself. We saw this a lot when Taylor Swift released her All Too Well 10-minute music video, which people treated like a puzzle, and it kind of was. Overall, music videos are a fun way for artists to connect with their fans, and I really enjoy them. If you've never had a music video night where you watch them with your friends just back to back, I highly suggest you do it, and I think you should start with Thriller. Now it's the 90s, woo! We can't talk about the 90s without talking about the Backstreet Boys. Backstreet's back, alright. Boy bands kind of took over this era. There was the Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, Boyz II Men, and just many others. But the Backstreet Boys really took the crown, even though they were only at their height of popularity for about 2 to 3 years. It was a group formed by their manager Lou Pearlman. He connected the members when he met them through auditions and vocal training, and then eventually one of the boys, I can't remember who it is, brought in their 2 cousins. And that is when the Backstreet Boys were formed. Unlike the Beatles, the Backstreet Boys were together for 30 years and are still an active group. This is unlike a lot of boy bands when they eventually fall apart or eventually grow apart from each other. And many people attested to the fact that the Backstreet Boys, when they became a group, they were a lot older than your traditional boy band boy. They were about college age, while most boy bands are formed when they're about 16 years old. So in turn, they had a better understanding of who they were as people and also like the type of music that they wanted to create instead of feeling like they needed to go off on their own. The Backstreet Boys are similar to other bands, however, because they went through a tumultuous legal battle with their manager. Essentially, they were being financially exploited by Lou Pearlman because whenever he created the group, he gave himself a much higher payout than the boys themselves. This united the group to fight back against him, and they eventually settled out of court because they wanted to move on with their career since it was when they were starting to pick up some steam in the United States. The Backstreet Boys were adored, usually by young women who over the years fostered a diehard community and what I believe sort of started what we know as like an online fandom. As their rise of fame sort of coincided with the rise of the internet. With the Backstreet Boys, I just wanted to touch on how the Backstreet Boys and their music was treated by society. I spoke about this very briefly in a video months ago, but I'll talk about it again. I just hate how pop music, especially when it targets younger girls, is disregarded as trash and not good music. And it's usually only ever seen that way because of their fan bases. Obviously, people are valid to think that the music is bad because they think it's bad and they don't like the sound. And it just blows my mind because over time we've seen so many bands and artists that primarily have a young female audience be so influential to culture as a whole, but are still just sort of disregarded. Yes, fan bases have a hand in that where it can seem like they only care about a band or an artist because they think they're attractive, but it's really not all that. And I just feel like it's inherently misogynistic when people see a group of young women enjoying things and they immediately want to be like, oh, but that's bad actually, and don't even really give it a chance or let the music speak for itself. Finally, we have hit modern times-ish with Justin Bieber. It's 2010. I'm 9 years old. I'm driving in the car with my mom when I hear a song come on the radio. Baby, 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 oh. My mom says, "Is that a little girl?" I said, "I don't know." But that was the first time that I heard Justin Bieber, and I still remember it so vividly to this day. That song was Baby, by the way, in case you didn't know. I don't know how you wouldn't know, but Baby by Justin Bieber. Where to even begin with Justin Bieber? Girls love him, boys hated him, even though they stole his haircut, but that's neither here nor there. And he was shot into stardom at the age of 16 years old. Side note here, when I was going through all these artists, I never really realized how young a lot of these people were when they became like super mega stars. Like Justin Bieber was 16 years old when he was doing world tours. If I was 16 years old doing a world tour, I would have died, like for sure. Anyways, back to Justin Bieber. He had a very natural charisma and his voice suited the songs that he was singing at the time. He wasn't like the best singer ever, but he was good enough where people really attached to him and his music. He eventually became much better though, so like that's not a dig on him. Before he got signed though, Justin Bieber is famously one of the first people to really be discovered through the internet. People were discovered more randomly through the street, but YouTube itself, like people, that hadn't happened before, where that's like much more common for people to gain popularity through social media now. So basically the story went that Scooter Braun, his producer manager, I don't know exactly what his role was before he met Justin Bieber, but he became his manager, found Justin online, and then decided that he wanted to fly him out to LA to see what the kid was really about and if he could make it in the industry so he could get a ton of money out of him. This man was not a good man. So he did bring him out to LA and really liked him, so then he connected him with people like Usher and began to make his first album, My World. Justin and his team were working overtime to get his name out there. But what a lot of people believe really shot him into stardom was his online presence. He regularly interacted with fans online, sometimes even following them on Twitter or like other social media platforms. And even without him interacting with the fans directly, the fan base fueled each other. I think it's in the Justin Bieber documentary. If you haven't watched that, good documentary, go watch it. But I think it's in that documentary where there's this girl who's standing outside the venue and she's like, I tweet Justin Bieber 1,000 times a day.
He tweeted and he said, can I read the tweet to you? Tomorrow, let's fill the streets of New York City with purple. We will be celebrating, and maybe you might just find your way inside. So I'm hoping I'll find my way inside.
And in general, I feel like in some ways, the Justin Bieber fan base kind of pioneered what we know now as like stan culture. You might be thinking, what's the difference between being in a fandom or a stan culture? But there is a little bit of a distinct difference, so I will tell you. Also, if you disagree with it or like I get it wrong, these are basically fake words anyways, so just hear me out. The word stan comes from an Eminem song where he talks about being harassed by a fan. So the word stan is a combination of the word stalker and fan. Stan. While this word has evolved over time and it's not really what that means anymore, I think it applies for what I'm speaking about right now in particular. Maybe it's not that Justin Bieber fans were more toxic than other fans in the past, but now they had a much easier way to be fans and also harass people online. They could harass Justin Bieber himself, his potential girlfriends, each other over who is the bigger Justin Bieber fan. Being on the internet also made these fans more accessible to the haters that didn't like him, who then the fans would fight with back and forth, never ending cycle with that. And I think it was just an early sign of what we often see today of how fans interact with celebrities and their haters. Because now every one of every group, whether they be fans or haters, can now directly interact with each other, causing bullying and harassment back and forth. It also led to people feeling more entitled than ever to know more about these celebrities' lives. And with Justin in particular, I feel like he was forced to give up so much of himself to his fans and management that it really did leave him as like a shell of a person. And in general, the internet just created a weird space for fans to feel way too involved in these celebrities' lives. Now, while this new way of online fandoms were forming on the internet, a new band was coming into the scene. They began to gain fast traction due to their online popularity spreading at a rapid pace, and that band was One Direction. While I wasn't a big Belieber, I was a die-hard One Direction fan. I generally don't know where I would even start when it came to One Direction because I know way too much about them and I know I would just babble for hours and hours. I could make a whole second video on them, to be quite honest, but instead I want to focus on some of the online conspiracy theories that came from when the group was formed. So let's go through the list. People thinking that Louis Tomlinson's girlfriend was a Beard and that there wasn't just one girl, but there's actually 3 twins that all pretended to be one person named Eleanor, and they swapped in between like tour dates and stuff, so he always looked like he had his girlfriend with him. Another was that Niall Horan's nephew was actually his son, but they didn't say that he was his son and instead was his nephew to maintain his boy band image. Larry Stylinson, which I spoke about earlier in the video, that if you play the 2012 track, They Don't Know About Us, in reverse, you will definitely hear Shut Up, Don't Ignore Me, Believe Me, Nice Going, Modest. Modest was the management company that ran One Direction at the time, and people believe that they dabbled in their personal lives like really heavily, especially hiding all the inter-band hookups that were happening. People believe that certain members of the band knew each other before One Direction was formed through other bands or just knowing each other from the area. There's a ton more, especially if you dive deep into how people would dissect their tweets and what their tweets really meant. Like, people thought there was a lot of subtext going on with them tweeting at each other or at other people. That's a whole other conspiracy theory realm though. But I'll just leave it at that for right now. So instead we're gonna take a moment to just look at this picture of frat boy Harry and remember.
Get out of my kitchen!
I work in a bakery.
London's quite big.
Simple, but effective.
I don't wanna be mean to our previous our previous musicians. So I'm just gonna put Harry right below. So to finish this video off, I want to talk about K-pop for a moment. K-pop has been dominating the global music industry in the past like many years. I mean, you know, about 5 for me, but I know it's longer for many other people, but I would say 5 in the way that they are today. To me, I feel like it's a sign of the Hollywood celebrity decline now that we're seeing more popular media, musicians, and artists coming out of other countries that aren't like your traditional Western artists, which isn't a bad thing. It's definitely just a change from what we've known for so many years. Growing up in America, most of what we consume is American media, but now we're having a chance to really enjoy media and music artists from other cultures that we might not have gotten to hear previously. The BTS army has been a dominating fandom on the internet for a long time, but it's only in recent years that we're seeing these artists come to major music festivals and do major concert tours in the United States. And they are captivating audiences everywhere. BTS, K-pop, and the internet fandoms that surround them aren't without their faults though. A lot of the fans are super parasocial with the members within them, and the bands themselves are forced to adhere to these crazy standards either by their management or by the fans that follow them. Like they're literally called idols, you know? But overall, I'm excited to see where this next wave of fandom culture fangirls goes with BTS. Okay, I'm done now. I think this is maybe one of the longest videos I've ever made, and my brain kind of hurts a little bit. Clearly, you can tell if you got to this point of the video that I am a huge fangirl in general. I love to dig deep in it. I've been there, done that, still being there, still doing that. And I think while there's a bunch of positives and negatives that come along with being a fan, it is just such a fun way for people to connect. And I really hope that younger generations find solace in fandoms the way that people, myself, generations before me did. Alright, thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this interesting, at least a little bit. I wrote this all in like 2 days and filmed it all within 2 days, so who knows if it's even cohesive, but thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe. Bye!